Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode of the Living on the Edge of Chaos podcast. Man, I am so excited for this guest. We have been trying to put this bad boy together for quite some time to get this conversation to light. And I think it's pretty fitting. The patience and the flexibility of the guest today speaks a lot, probably to the work that she does and is trying to help people with, among many things. And so maybe it's the universe was trying to challenge us in the words that we wanted to talk about today. So I am here today with Jordan Turner. And so Jordan, we'll talk a little bit here about how we got connected and the things we want to talk about. But before we do that, let's let everybody know who you are. So who are you? What do you do? And what in the world do you got going on?
Well, hello, Aaron. Thank you for having me. I've heard great things about this podcast. So I am the director of mindful education in schools for Challenge to Change. So we're a mindful education programming, really big in this area, actually. So we're in over 120 schools across Iowa, one in Spain as well. So that's pretty cool. Trying to get over to the Illinois side. But I would talk a lot more about what we do and things like that. But I'm also and 100% top-notch like mother, right? That's my number one thing. That's why we couldn't meet all those other times, because kids, right? They really throw a wrench in plans, but that's okay. So I have two young girls, very young. They're actually my youngest is gonna be 1 on May 15th, and my oldest is gonna be 3 on June 2nd. So we're in the thick of it right now. And I'm a wife too. My husband's a principal in Bettendorf. And yeah, I love mindfulness. I'm an educator prior to where I've been. So I've been an educator in Davenport. I'll share my whole journey whenever you're ready for it. But I love this stuff. And I love that you're shedding light on so many other opportunities and resources for my number one passion, which is educator wellness, that we can get into and talk about. So thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so excited to bring this to the fold, to more voices and to more minds and ears as we think about this, because I think at the time of this recording here, it's the beginning of May, and life, anybody who spends any time in education in any sort of capacity knows you just hold on for dear life during this last month or so, as there's just so much going on, and end of the year and so many things. And so the way I got connected with you I was doing some professional development with Lego and purposeful play, and then this incredible day, then you segued in right after, and I found myself really captivated by the ideas that you were talking about and sharing with the staff, and in many ways it kind of aligned with a lot of my values in terms of what I believe in hands-on learning and play, but through a whole different approach through mindfulness. And before we get there, because you talked a little bit about first and foremost, being a mother, which is a full-time job, especially at the ages of your children. You're married to an administrator. You were also in education. So I want to set the stage here a little bit, because I think it's really important as we build into what you're doing now, which is still very much education related. But let's talk about, you were in the classroom and then you're still teaching. Your classroom, I always say my classroom looks different, working with adults and things, but talk a little bit about your journey in education and kind of how you found your place with what you're doing now, so people have some context, so they understand that you get it.
Yes. Yeah. And whenever I share my whole journey, I really like to take it back really far, because I do think that that's important to where I am right now and my passion and what I want to do. Born and raised in Rock Falls, Illinois, so very small town. My parents are still together, middle class. My privilege, I've had a a score of 0, not really much trauma within my life. And my parents in education, my dad's an educator, my mom's on the school board. So I was like, education, yeah, I'm going to do it. That's what I know. And so I went to school for that, was an athlete. And then once I graduated with my education degree, I thought I am meant for bigger things. So I actually moved out east and became a nanny right outside Manhattan, right in New Jersey. Totally different life, right? So more on the higher end class, 3 little girls. I'm used to a whole bunch of little boys. I'm the oldest and I have all brothers, all boy cousins. So definitely a big mind shift. I learned so much, and I was there for 2 whole years. And I always say that they're a huge part of my journey too, because everyone needs what I teach and my passion, mindfulness and emotional intelligence. So I'm so glad I got that experience. But of course, I was not meant for the big life. I'm like, okay, yep, this isn't for me. So then that's when I came back and I got my first teaching job at Jefferson Elementary in Davenport, Iowa. And the reason why I share what I shared before is because if you know Jefferson, it is a complete and total shift than anything I've ever seen in my whole life. How I was raised, how I was a nanny, and then I come to the school, very low socioeconomic school, lots of students with high trauma, high needs, sadly low emotional intelligence, right? Having the ability to recognize our emotions and work through them. I had no idea this even existed because of my privilege, right? I know I am privileged in that sense to not even know that this world existed. So I was mind blown. My first year of education, I actually got the mumps. I got high blood pressure. I was not taking care of myself whatsoever. I thought I was. I was going to yoga probably every single day. I was getting my 200-hour yoga teacher training. So on top of being an educator, in education, we have to have more than one job most of the time. So I had a few jobs. So I was really just running low on me personally, and it was showing physically. Getting the mumps, I mean, who gets the mumps, right?
Right.
Wild. So if educators are listening to this, they're like, oh, I remember having to send out that public health paper to
That's
my
right.
students. But I mean, if you also have been to Jefferson, you know that if you're there, you're there. Like you love it. You're a family. And that is what I felt. And I could cry just thinking about it because I'm still there to this day. I teach mindful education and I still go back. I can't ever leave because it's a family and those kids thrive on relationships. And that's where also I met my husband too. So on top of that, I got him out of the deal, but we also were coming home every single night and we were putting our day on one another. You think someone's holding space for you. And now looking back, I'm like, we were never truly holding space for one another because we would talk about our day. We would go to bed, wake up, do the same thing the next day. We were never truly filling up our cup. And I'm realizing that the more and more I'm able to now separate myself, I realize on what educators need because I have that ability to be there because I was there for 6 years. And another big part of my passion is my last year teaching there. I was 8 months pregnant and ready to create this family, continuing being an educator. We had a student, 6th grade student, shot and killed due to gang violence. And that was something that I'll never forget. And everything that came after it, having to be pregnant to the crosswalk with a police officer. The day after he passed away, all those students, we had support from the district, from teachers. They were all in the library, which is where my office was. And all the students who came down wanted to come to their safe person, which was me. And I loved that. But at the same time, that was a lot for me to carry and a lot for me to see on how I couldn't give these tools to every single kid with having my full-time job, with then eventually being a mother, being a wife, because my husband was still there at that time. And I just see these kids sobbing and hanging all over me and not knowing how to channel any of these emotions, which they shouldn't, right? It's a really sad part of our reality right now is that they're having to go through this, but it is our reality. So how can I get these tools into more students' hands, into more educators' hands? Because I was to the point of burnout. I was like, I can't keep going anymore. I physically am not healthy. I'm mentally not healthy, emotionally not healthy. And then now I'm about to bring in a baby into the world.
Yeah.
So how and what can I do? And I had challenge to change. I was lucky enough to have brought this into Davenport and to almost kind of create this position for myself by growing the program here. So yeah, I took a little pay cut. Me and my husband talked about it, and I just knew that this is where my passion could thrive more, and I could share this more work with more people. And then that's kind of where it started because now Molly Schreiber, our founder and CEO, she gives us the opportunity to have, we call them like brain children, right? So these ideas on how we can develop our curriculum even better. So that is then where emotional intelligence came in. And I don't want to keep talking if you need to stop me at any time because that is what you saw. So I know about mindful education, yoga, mindfulness, this structure that really correlates with students, but there's been this whole extra piece that I didn't even know existed until I got this job and this opportunity. So I know that's a big, long answer to your answer, but it's just something I just want any listener out there to know, any educator to know that when I share this work, it is because I truly am passionate about it. And I do feel like I am fulfilling my noble goal, my core values, and my passion. So yeah.
No,
So
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And man, so many questions that I want to raise to you as you were sharing that, and You got me thinking about some things maybe I haven't always thought about. And before I get into those questions, let's just take a quick second and explain a little bit for those that are not aware of challenge to change,
Mhm.
just what that is. Because for a lot of people that are listening, both local where we are as well as audience from all over, they might not even know that this is even a thing. Just like as you were talking about in your story, right? There's these things that, man, I didn't even know that existed that
Yeah.
could be helpful. I mean, you talked about doing some yoga, but it's more than yoga,
Yeah.
as I've learned. So maybe just quick, a 30-second elevator pitch for what is challenge to change, so people are even aware of the context for what you do, and then I have some questions that I want to dive into based on your
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. So at Challenge Change, we provide preventative, social and emotional, brain health, well-being tools, strategies to all ages. So we actually have curriculum baby and me. We actually are in the medical field. So we do it with practitioners and patients. So we're all the way up to, we say 99, but it could go even farther than that. So we provide it in all different kinds of structures. That's what I love about this. And when I said the word brainchild, is because when someone has an idea where Molly feels like it can make a difference in the world, like share it with her, right? Let her know and how it can be used. So we have elementary curriculum. So I'm ahead of the school. So what I do is I oversee all of our curriculum, all of our structures, and how it can be embedded within the schools. So we can go in different ways. So we can go in live, and that's what a lot of our schools around here have, where we send in a certified yoga instructor, because we have a lot of continuing education as well. So actually a lot of the people at the AEA have went through our 95-hour toddler, kids, and teens yoga teacher training. And they go in and they would teach the lessons. So the teachers can participate with their students. And it's awesome. We go in once a month, and I truly do love it. I mean, it is like what got me hooked. It gets what so many teachers hooked on it. But what I've been starting to realize now in my position is that there's so much more to what we can offer than what we give within live. So I want to have an invested employee meet with me so I can say, hey, here's our curriculum. How can we start to really embed it in what you're already doing, right? Not be something more on their plate, but be just something that can just happen. So like a breath technique in the morning, or mudras, or I mean, I could go into those structures too, because I would love to share little tips and tricks for your listeners that they can take and use right away, because those are the pieces that are embedded no matter where we're at, right? So it's always the 5 parts of practice is what you'll see, whether you are a baby in me or you are in the medical field. You will always see our very structured 5 parts of practice. So a seated practice, so kind of like a check-in to where we see on how we're feeling, how can we manage those emotions, and then the movement. So that's where our yoga piece comes in. So small, but it is a big part. I mean, right now, me and you talking for an hour, we're going to be like, okay, I got to get up and move a little bit, right? That's,
Yeah.
it helps us learn. And then the third part is our heart of the lesson. So that's like our objective. What do we want students to learn? That's kind of where those social and emotional competencies can come in, or, brain health is such a big word too. How can we really bring in stress, coping mechanisms like that? And then we always do our guided visualization. And I will say that all of those are recorded through us. We write these for students, and they are free on our website. So I will make sure that all of your followers have that link, because I just love that about us. I love that if you have something good and that it can be you spread nationwide, like let's share it, because that is a lot of the kids' favorite part. We call it the yoga nap. So it's where they get to lay down, close their eyes, and just really just be. And then the last part is the close of practice. So that's just where we bring them from that relaxed state of mind from their yoga nap up to a more focused state of mind, where we might say mantras, or we might just, how can we close it up and sum up what we've learned today as a staff? So it can look all 5 parts within 30 minutes to 45 minutes, or it can be broken down. That's what I love about it. That's where teachers, I think, are really liking about it. I've really seen some schools dive deep into how can I put different parts of these into our everyday structure. So that's kind of the piece that I think is really important to know about Challenge to Change, is the structure.
Yeah, I love that, and I appreciate you providing those links for those that listen. You guys
Yeah.
all know we will have the links in the show notes. And when I saw you working with the staff that when our paths aligned, that was something that resonated with me. And actually, as you're talking even now, I'm thinking about this. At the time of this recording, it is Teacher Appreciation Week. Shocking, perfect alignment. And as you're talking now, I'm thinking of a couple questions. One, we know how important this is. And I feel like I don't mean this in a bad way towards leaders or adults within the education system, and I'm sure it can be anywhere, but education is the only space I really know. We say take care of yourself, have a break, take a time out on your weekend. And this teacher appreciation week, yes, it's great. We like to be acknowledged in that. But that actually, those things aren't solving the burnout issue. They're not solving the emotional heaviness that comes with the job, let alone the emotional heaviness that so many kids are bringing in, whether that's, schools like Jefferson, which there's a lot of children with trauma and things of that nature. And it can also, I see it in well-to-do schools where
Oh yeah.
maybe we overlook. I always say it's like there's like the silent cries of the same kind of needs. I know it looks different, but we sometimes overlook that.
100%.
How are you finding ways to get your work in front of educators, to even get into the schools? And the reason I'm asking this is because so many people I know would benefit, but it's like, where is the time? I mean, I think about what I
Yeah.
do, and it's like, oh man, we'd really love computer science help or STEM help or AI help, but we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so,
Oh, for sure.
and so how are you finding ways to get that into the space? And maybe talk a little bit too about then how do you help educators embrace that? Because even though we know it's good, we can also, as adult learners, be a little stubborn, right? And be like,
Oh
I got
yeah.
papers are great, or things of that nature.
Mhm.
So maybe however you want to approach that, but I think it's not gateways necessarily, but they are
Yeah,
barriers to bring this into the spaces where I don't think anybody would argue that it's not needed, but it's also not getting in enough to the places where it needs to be.
and I think you just saying that, I go back to what I just shared about what we do at Challenge Change, and it was all geared towards students. And there is this huge piece that is my passion about educator wellness, but I didn't even share it because I'm in that mindset too, right? Students, students, students. But thank you for transitioning to that because I see it. I know admin sometimes can get a bad rap. My husband's one of them, but I see the change coming, like to where educators, it's going to be, we know that it starts at the top. We say it, we know it, but it's the time.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that in couple years from now, they're going to be coming to me because we have this educator wellness piece. So I'm going to start from what I know. So I told you when I left and I had the space to get more training from Challenge to Change. Dr. Liza Johnson, she works for the University of Dubuque. She's a partner with 6 Seconds. So 6 Seconds is the largest EQ global market. We could put their link down at the bottom so people can have more information on them. They created these social and emotional competencies for adults, right? So how can we start to live with more purpose? How can we truly connect? How can we be passionate every single day about what we do? Having that noble goal in mind. It's incredible work. But what Dr. Eliza Johnson did was she created a framework. She created, I always have the book right on hand. She created this, it's a workbook, but it's more than a workbook. I mean, I have like 3 of these. I go through it. I have taken this course 4 different times, and I'm now train the trainer. I'm taking more trainings this summer. And what it does, so it's called Know, Choose, Give. And what it does is it takes you through. So if you get into a situation, because we're in situations all day, difficult, maybe just a little bit, kind of minor, like that buffalo, high, low buffalo, right? No matter which one it is, you're in this situation. And I always tell people, I want you to think KCG, KCG, KCG. What do I know about myself? What am I feeling? So something happened. What am I feeling? Because right when we can name it, then we can tame it, right? We all know that saying, name it to tame it.
Yeah.
Instantly, when we can appropriately name our emotion, then we can do the next step, which is give yourself. What can I do to truly give myself what I want? Or I'm sorry, choose yourself. What can I choose to then give myself what I want? So we can think more about gratitude, right? Instead of like sitting with our anxiety and sitting in that and making like the not best choices. I always think about my safe person, my husband. He gets the worst of me sometimes, right? I'm instantly reacting when I feel angry. I'm not choosing to have gratitude, to have empathy, to have conversations in the best kind of way. So that's what this does, is it dives through different competencies that you can come to and you can use to then give yourself, what is it that you want? How can you live with empathy? What is your noble goal in life? So my noble goal is to empower universal connection and love. So if every single day I am thinking of that, I can think, okay, how can I embody that in everything that I do? But emotional intelligence is all about when we fall flat on our face as well. So I want all your listeners to know too that if you ask my husband, he says he probably will say that I need this a lot more, right? So I mean, like, know that that's okay, but it's just having that awareness and that acknowledgement to like do better the next time. And that's why I love this work, because you said it, right? It's known out there, self-care, take time for yourself, do this, do that. Love it. I hope it continues. But there needs to be more practical tools that we can use to have it more on us, right? So you do have to do the work to feel better. We do have to do the work. And that's why I love and believe in this work through and through. And I think that I will continue to share this for as long as I can. So this course is given at the University of Dubuque. It's given to police officers, firefighters. I've given it to educators in our area. It can be broken down as small as it needs to be, but it can also be, a never ending learning cycle. So I hope, if you have any questions about that, I hope I kind of said a lot of it, but it's really based around, emotional intelligence and just building that up in us.
Yeah, no, that's great. And to build on to that, and also from something that you said earlier, I'm curious because you made a shift in your career. You had self-awareness, where you loved what you were doing, but you felt another calling to do this work that you're doing now. And I think about that. I think about part of that 5-step process. You talked about the kids loving,
Mhm.
where they lay down and just kind of not nap, but they're working through that visualization piece where we, when we feel stressed, and you're going to know way more about this than me, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm the expert here.
Well, face
I
it.
was just working with educators this morning who were stressed and they were feeling anxious about some work that was going on, and they were just ramping up. I mean, we're talking this is 7:30 in the morning, right? And it's just like, man, I'm sitting here and I'm like, we just need to sit and pause, breathe, work through it, get ourselves calibrated, and be like, what's the next step? So this is kind of a two-pronged approach, not a very good interview strategy, but I'm curious on the importance of pause. I believe in space. I talk about space a lot when I'm talking about authentic learning. Like, we need a space for vulnerability. When I'm thinking about that through a learner lens, and I don't always. I think in the back of my mind, I'm thinking the emotional space. But sometimes maybe we're not even emotional. We're not even emotionally available to even push ourselves to new levels of learning. And then I also, and maybe from your personal experience with that, you had the courage to make that change. So to merge this together into a long, hot-winded take here, how did you find the strength to make a change from a place that you love, but knew also that maybe there was a pivot in the career of education and learning? And talk a little bit more about providing that space for ourselves, our students, so that we can be what we want to be for others, whether that's a spouse, our students, our friends, grandkids, whatever our role might be, because I think they're entwined in my brain some way. And I think it's really important because I think a lot of people hear this stuff, they read about it, maybe they see something on social media, but yet it never moves. I shouldn't say never. It rarely moves into action. And I think that's like a missing link for so many of us.
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of thoughts in my mind right now. I think you brought up a great point though. Like, what did I do to make the change? And I honestly, back then, I probably truly didn't know. I thought, well, I know I want to be the best mother I can be. But I think through my learnings with this work of KCG, I really have always kind of known what my passion and my noble goal is. What is my why? And it still has to do with education, but I think that I was always meant to give it to more of educators and to give it to more students. And I have had the work to now see that. But I think if educators are listening, like, can they start to establish what is their why? Why do they do what they do? What's their noble goal? Because honestly, if we're in education, it has something to do with that. Whether we do bring in our personal life. I mean, I probably knew I wanted to be an educator because I knew I wanted to be a mother, right? They correlate. Like, they
Yeah.
do. If we're in education, like, we're doing it because it's something that is just in us. So I think that that's like a huge first step for people to do, and to also know that that doesn't happen overnight. Really take the time, like you said, to pause. When you're in that situation, like you talked about this morning with educators, because I love women professional development. I love educators. I know that they're hard sometimes, but it's my jam. Like, they're the best because they deserve the time to be mad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think when that happens, if they had some of these tools that they did when they're not feeling that way, because I know sometimes it's hard to think when you're already in that state, heightened state, but they can come back to their why. So they're stressed out about something, they're overwhelmed about something. Okay, that is relevant. That is okay to feel that way. But let's pause and let's think, what can I control? right? Okay, I can control how I'm feeling. What's under that? What are my patterns when I feel that way? And then what truly is my why? What's my ending goal? Whether it's in the situation or it's my whole noble goal, because once you can see that light just a little bit, we can kind of get out of that tunnel of stress, of anxiety. If we can just see the light, we might not get there in that moment. We all know that doesn't happen. Doesn't happen to me, and I practice this stuff daily. But if we have that light, we have that why, we have that drive, and we come back to it, eventually we can get out of that hole, and we know we're going to get out of that tunnel. I don't know if that completely answered all of your question per
No,
se, but
it's great. Yeah,
um,
it reminds me of, we can be so up in the system
mhm.
of education, mixed in with the day-to-day grind or the job, even though it is a calling and a passion for so many of us, but there's just so many moving parts and so many kids and so many layers to all the things because they all kind of become our children, whether we always acknowledge that in the moment or not. And so it kind of reminds, as you're talking about, you got to name it to tame it with the emotions. It's also coming back to remembering our purpose and our why, because I think we can lose sight of that sometimes.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, I know I'm a teacher because I love kids or I love this, but it's like, I think really getting back to some of the work that I do, but through a different kind of conversation piece is like, but let's really, really break that down. Let's not
Break
just
it
say
down.
because I love kids. Like I know that's important, but like, what is your why? Like, why is it? And then is that aligned to how we're doing school? And
Yes.
it's often not always, and it's not because there's right or wrong or good or bad. It's there's a lot of cogs in the
Mm,
system, and so I think getting back to that identity to then
I
figure
just
out, well, then
love that.
how do my actions align with that? And I feel like I'm resonating through your work, and you're coming at it from a different angle, but it's all kind of like gelling, like it's all needed. And so your answer was perfect.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you said, I forget how you said it, but when we're in situation, we're thinking about something, you said like the emotions are back here. Dr. Liza, she asked us the question. She said, how many of us at our age have had a class solely based on emotions, K through high school? And
Mm,
no adult raises their hand because we haven't had that work. So I think that that's important for people to know too, that like it's going to take time. It's going to take time to be able to work through our emotions, have the right tools to do that, to acknowledge them, and then to find our purpose again. Having grace with ourselves too is like really important, and to know that they're doing the work. So when their students are our age, they're all going to be raising their hand because
yeah,
we're doing it. So
yeah. Yeah, so maybe, as we're talking through this, someone's listening and they're being reminded of how important this is, and maybe they're even reflecting on their own emotions, working through whatever they're going through. What are maybe, I don't want to call them quick wins because I know the work
yeah,
is not an overnight snap your fingers and I sit down and close my eyes and breathe for a minute and all of a sudden all things are cured. I
there
know
was-
that's not what the work is. For people, because I'm also thinking, like we also don't know what we don't know. And for me, I have my notebook for like when I was packing up my Lego and you were talking, and then I found myself just standing and listening. Like I wrote down even like the idea, which I keep digging into about the idea of like emotions are like in your body for like 6 seconds, like it like
yeah.
takes your. And so like I was like, man, I didn't like to me like I got to know more about that. So give
Let's
us,
do it.
if someone's listening that wants to maybe get started with themselves or with students or try to figure out, especially, as it's the end of the year or they come across it and it's the beginning of the year or any time of the year, really, for someone to go like, okay, what do I even do? Because I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that we could talk about quite a few things. Like we started to talk about the 5 parts of practice, but I really
Yeah.
feel like a lot of our conversation is starting to drive more towards educator wellness. So I think the number one tool, let's just dive into that KCG, right?
Yeah.
So I love to think, so if our listeners are listening, think about a situation. It can be difficult, it can be that buffalo. Sometimes as educators, normally our situations with students, they kind of just rub off of us, right? It's kind of hard to pinpoint one of those. A lot of times it's with our safe person. So I always come back to a something that happened with my husband, right? It could be very small, very big, something that happened between us years ago. So think about your situation. You have this difficult situation, whatever it might be. And then I want you to think, okay, if I had KCG, how would that go? So our K, know yourself. Instantly, when you're thinking about that situation, what emotions were you feeling? Right. So I always go back. So if me and my husband were having an argument and he did something that I didn't like, I can name a few things, right? But something so silly as this is people who listen who have heard me give this speech. He laid down mulch one day, different colored mulch, when we were about to have like a whole bunch of people over for a birthday party that I've been planning for months. And he thought laying down different colored mulch right before they came was the best choice to make. So silly, so small. But in my mind, that situation really heightened me, right? So I could have thought instantly, what do I know about myself? What am I feeling? I'm feeling angry, but I'm also feeling overwhelmed because I did that to myself, right? Having all these people come. And I'm also feeling really excited. So if I can name like 3 emotions, sometimes that can already, I like to use this little thing because I have a thermostat that goes like this. So, right. So I'm already dialing down that more heightened emotion.
Mm.
Okay. So I have those. And then you want to ask yourself, what are my patterns when I feel that way? So when I feel angry or if I'm tired, I know that I react in a way different way than I would when I'm calm, right? So knowing that too, understand you're like a self-scientist. That's what you heard during that PD.
Yeah.
You're a self-scientist. You're asking yourself, what am I feeling? How do I act? Okay, we have that acknowledgement. And then we get into choose yourself. So choose yourself is where you want to find those more practical tools that we can use. So maybe it is something like self-talk, where you're giving yourself, a little hyped up conversation. I always go back to gratitude. I feel like gratitude for me can instantly make me feel better. I mean, that's actually research based, that it really does get our serotonin levels up. I mean, it makes us feel better instantly. So if I was to think of things that I'm grateful for, like I'm so grateful that I have a daughter that I'm throwing a birthday party for. I'm so grateful that I just have this house. It's like, why am I getting so stuck on these small little things that he's doing? Like that makes him feel good because at the end of the day, give yourself, for me, is that noble goal. It's connection, it's love. If I'm going out to him and I say yelling, we don't yell, but the arguments that you have with your spouse, right? It's a little heightened. If I was to go out and do that to him, am I creating this space and environment for him, for people coming to my house, for my daughters? Am I creating that space to feel connected, to feel love? Probably not. So then, it's just kind of this never ending cycle because then it goes back to, hey, this is what I can do. I can pause, like you said, I can take those deep breaths. I can choose to do things that are going to give me a better outcome. And I think if your listeners are taking away anything like this concept, please know that it's a big concept. I told you I've taken this course 4 times, but if they can still just think they're in a situation, they can think KCG, whether you even know what that means. Hey, you paused, right? You
True.
talked about that 6 seconds. So 6 seconds, hence the company that created this, emotions cycle in and out of our body within 6 seconds. That doesn't mean that you don't hang on to them, but it's like, do you want to hang on to anger or do you want to think about how you're overwhelmed? Right. So I just talked about anger. Well, within 6 seconds, I could have thought, well, I'm also overwhelmed. Oh, wait, I did that to myself. Oh, yeah. Okay. I feel just a little bit better now. If that makes a ton of sense, but it is all about that pause. It's about that pause, whichever way you do it. Does that give him a little tip and trick? Am I doing all right with that?
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. So let's run with that. So we're talking about this KCG. We're talking about this pause. I'm thinking about I'm back in the classroom. I've got 30 kids in front of me.
Oh,
I'm trying to keep them engaged. I'm trying to keep them going. And anytime you have lots of humans, there's lots of emotions and there's lots of different stages of where people are at. And maybe there's a better framing to this. So I'm just gonna like word vomit it out. I'm trying to think through now. I'm an educator. Maybe I need space. Maybe there's me and another student or a group of students. Man, we're just the friction's building. Talk a little bit about how we can, to a point where we can give space to the kids or give space to ourselves, but it doesn't mean that we're giving up control or authority, if that makes sense. Like I feel like we can be our own worst enemies in that time because we think we've got to be like the one, like it's my way, it's my system, and I think that comes from the pressures of the school and the system. How do you navigate that or ideas for that? Because I think that's probably in those moments, right? Like, oh my gosh, I sometimes
yeah.
just walking away, but like any tips or ideas to that? Because I bet that's probably a daily feeling for a lot of the listeners.
It is. Yes. I will say that this work that I've been sharing about, like, this is work for you to do first, right?
Yeah.
When we are in that situation, you've done the work prior, so then you can handle it a little bit better. So know that takes time. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to make bad choices too, right? Get a little heightened, maybe raise our voice a little bit. But I just think the more and more we do the work on ourselves when we're not heightened, same thing with our students, right? working and giving them the tools like breath techniques. Mudras is, I always like to say, mindfulness for our hands. I think it's such an easy concept for students to grasp, to where like turtle in the shell is one like this that we teach students to hold in their lap, close their eyes, and they know that they can use that when they're feeling a little angry, a little overwhelmed, and they can just take a couple of deep breaths. Right. But we want to teach those when students are heightened, because then they can pull it out of their toolbox when they are. It takes time, takes practice, right? They say, what you might know this more, but you develop a habit after you do something for 30 days in a row, 28, 30 days in a row.
Yeah.
It's across the board. So like we got to be teaching these breath techniques every single day. So when we're in that small group, they already know what to do. And maybe you do have to be the one to pause and to gear them towards that breath technique, but they already know what it is. So then they're able to actually use it for its benefits. I don't know if that,
Yeah.
hopefully
I
that
mean,
helps a little bit.
well, I think it connects to earlier what you were saying earlier. Like, how do we bring this work into the classroom space or into our teaching practice where it's not one more thing? And I think if we are intentional about
Yeah.
these techniques and these different strategies that can help us, it can also help students. Then when we're in the moment, it becomes like the subconscious takes over, and we don't have to, now we're not teaching one more thing because we're blah blah blah. It's, hey, we've already got these things because we're just building it into this is, there's some phenomenal educators I work with on in some projects. We always say this is how we do business. It's not one more thing. This is just how we teach high quality learning and make it authentic and real for kids. And so this is not a dog and pony show. It's not we're going to do all the things and then go do this. This is just how we do it. And I
Yes.
feel like this becomes part of that equation that in the long run of a school year, holy cow, talk about how much time and energy and emotion that could save by being intentional in that practice and that building that awareness of these techniques and tips and strategies so that it just becomes intuition. And I think
Yes.
that's something that is like a reframing of how we empower educators generally in PD, right? Where we usually just, it's maybe once a month or once a year, we give them a whole bunch of things and we wonder why it doesn't stick. And so like, I just love it. And I just want to see it more in the spaces.
Yes, and that's where we come in, right? That's what we want to teach. That's why we step and we have a different classroom now, right? So we can do that work to hopefully be able to get it into your hands more, so it's not another thing on their plate. It can just be embedded in what they already do. So I know that they know, but we're doing the work on our end to make sure that that happens for them, because they do have a lot, and that's nothing that we ever want to be. A challenge change is something more. We want to just a good friend, Nick Swanson, says we want to be the plate. Right? We want to support everything that they're already doing. We want to be that for them. So,
yeah. So Jordan, you've talked a lot about how much learning you've done and continue to do in this role because there's so much to it. I am curious in your own journey as you've worked through this. You've taken the course 4 times, and I know you've probably done 18 million other things. What has been some of the most maybe not shocking, but as you're going through this learning, like some of your biggest odds, because like you said, you're doing the work and you're trying to figure out how to then leverage that into the spaces to help educators and students so that this work can grow and manifest.
yeah.
But I am curious for you, what have been some of the things that you've dove into this? You're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I didn't know, or oh, this is so crazy. Like what are some of those awesome things that you've discovered in your journey? There's probably a lot, but I mean, are there some?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go. No, you're
No,
good.
I think like you said, that 6 seconds when I heard about that, and I know that other educators, when I say that, they're like, what? That's crazy. It's like, yeah, actually, emotions are data. They're there for a reason. And I grew up athlete, right? So I grew up like, oh, I can't deal with that emotion right now. I got to focus on at bat, or I got to focus on what I'm doing. I got to focus on my students, got to focus on my kids. But it's like, oh no, our emotions are a huge part of us. And I think that was a big aha moment for me. And I think it's also been an aha moment when I realized people in my personal life on maybe what their emotional intelligence is, and then I'm giving them empathy to be like, it's just not there, right? They weren't taught it. That's not on them for how they just reacted or responded to me. And I think that has been something huge for me to learn. And especially, we know the way the world is now. It's definitely can be very divided, especially in households if you have different political views, all of those things. And we could really get stuck in that. We could really like tarnish relationships. And I think for me, that's been a big aha moment. Whoa, like I just need to do the work on myself. I can internally do this work, because I know what I want. I want to provide the space for my children, for my children's generation, for the educators. Like, that's what I want. So that's what I need to be stayed in. And that's what I need to like stay focused on. Truly, that's been a big aha moment for me, is just realizing that it is 6 seconds, it is emotions. And a lot of people, myself included, don't have the knowledge around it. And to have empathy with that, right? Have grace.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, I was talking with two phenomenal educators just yesterday, one that's in Denmark and one that's out in California, and they're kind of like my thought partners, maybe slash like educational therapists. I'm not quite sure what label I want to give them.
Oh, I
But
like that.
but we were talking about gosh, just this whole idea around like we don't know what we don't know. And
Yeah.
and how do we help people with that? Because it's not that they're, sometimes with kids we're so quick to label them lazy, or there's maybe we have colleagues and we're so quick to say they don't care. And I think where it's just like almost goes back to like that name entertainment. Like maybe we don't have the words or the understanding or the empathy to realize it's not that. Like I mean, we
Mm,
all have lazy moments, but let's really dive into why we think maybe this child is lazy. And it's really not that. It's there's this, and this, and
yeah.
all the
How we
things that
grew
go
up,
into
how we
that.
were raised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find that, and we are talking about, we don't teach educators through their programs like this, like how learning works, right? We teach them pedagogy, we teach them classroom management, we teach them,
Hmm.
the history of education, but we don't get into like the brain enough. Or you talking? We don't even
No.
get into like I've never had a training on emotions. I don't think or if I did, maybe it was like once in my career.
Yeah.
And it's like we're just brainstorming, like, why is that not happening? Like when we see all the problems happening in education right now, it's like because
Mhm.
we're not helping the adults who want to help these children. And they're
Yes.
not equipped with the insights, not because they don't care or don't want to. We're not providing it to them.
Yes, we're not providing them the tools that they need to be healthy. Like we've heard it before. We cannot pour from an empty cup. Giving a full cup is not about giving a Starbucks gift card. It's about giving them the tools and opportunities to work on themselves, to really have the tools that when we're not there, like they can pull from it. And so
Yeah.
I don't want to take away from a Starbucks gift card. Like give your
Yeah.
teacher a Starbucks gift card for sure.
Right.
They deserve that too. But
Heck yeah.
just like how do we really fill up their cup? Because they need it. Like you said, they don't know what they don't know. So
Right.
how can we get this into more hands? And I do feel like I do feel like I said earlier, I feel like it's coming. Maybe I'm just too hopeful. Optimism is one of my core values too. I'm a little bit overly optimistic sometimes, but you almost have to be in the world of education to keep thriving for what you want. But I know that here brain health so much more, and I see these brain health. We partner really closely with Brain Health Now. They're putting in brain health rooms across Iowa, changing the language, and they're doing it for, it's really in high schools right now, but I know that growth is there for even more. So I'm seeing it. I'm
Yeah.
hopeful.
I agree. I think the pendulum's swinging. I think education kind of goes back and forth, and I think we've hit a spot where the kids are crying for help, teachers are crying for help, the system's crying for help as we can't find bodies to do the job. And I mean, all the things we're starting to realize that we do need to address the whole child. And we've been so focused in the system on the academic piece, and we're not seeing maybe the growth that we want in the big system. So I think people are finally starting to realize, well, maybe we should look at this other part, because they are
Yeah.
more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. And I know people know that, but like the actions haven't been following through. But I feel like it's starting to come back, that people are starting to realize, like, yeah, we need to have conversations around that. We need to bring this part in. We need to bring these other elements in. So I agree with you. Yeah, we got to have optimism, but I also agree that I think the conversations feel more natural and they're happening more. Not enough, but they're happening more than what they were 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's
I mean,
like
the
way
good
more
news.
than before COVID. So I
Yeah.
think there is hope.
I mean, it's people like you doing the work. Like you just heard me speak for maybe a half hour, and you're like, "Yep, need that. Need people to know." It's just it's people like you and that are just spreading the work and spreading the word because, like you said, it's needed. It's needed. So hopefully we can get there. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, this has been a fantastic conversation. And before we wrap up and close with, where people can reach out and learn more and get all that in the show notes, I love to ask my guests when we wrap up this final question, which is, always so great. But the question I have for you, and I'm now interested in, you're probably like, oh, great, now you put me in the hot seat. What's one of the best pieces of advice that you have received in your life?
Holy cow, that is, they should have
Eh,
given me that before.
I
Oh my
know, I know,
gosh.
I know.
I don't know why I keep going back to my boss. She says, live the life that you love. And I think all the work that she's given with that, it can be, I think that's great advice, and I think I lose track of it. I think
Mm,
I go sometimes every single day we get to work, we do what we have to do. My husband comes home and I'm like, okay, can you do this? I got to do that. And at the end of the day, I'm like, did I love the day? Did I really love that? And I think I need to go back to that because I think that is great advice. And you really put me on the hot spot. So if
yeah,
I come up with something else, we're gonna put that in the notes too. But I,
no,
I
that's
think
good.
I think that's good. It's just a good outlook to have because that's what we have control over. Um,
I think that's a fantastic piece of advice, and I think it's as we're telling our brains, KCG in our brain, we take a moment to pause to also be reminded in those moments of the things that we do love, and are we bringing that into our space because we can. It shouldn't be so easy, but it's easy to lose sight of those things and to appreciate those
yeah.
small moments where it does arise, and that's I know for all of us easier said than done, but I think it's a fantastic piece of advice.
What's yours? Have you shared yours?
I have not. No one has pressed me back on it. That's so. You know, this isn't really a piece of advice, but something that has resonated with me all the way from seventh grade. I had a teacher who eventually also was my freshman basketball coach, and he did something that every single day he would shake all our hands when we walked into the school in seventh grade, where we're all too cool. In the beginning of every class, he would always tell us that he loved us.
Mm.
And I remember being that seventh grade boy and rolling my eyes and smirking and all the things. But I also know that deep down, like that was the fundamental reason. I knew from seventh grade I wanted to be a teacher because
Well,
that moment every day is what I needed. Even as I scoffed and tried to act too cool as we like to do in junior high. And he's just one of those people that is such a small thing that like I think about probably on a weekly basis in some shape or form it comes up. So it's not really like an advice, it's more like a model of like the
moment.
actions, right? Do we show up for the people every day? And for me that was like he's showing up. He doesn't have to shake our hands. He doesn't have to say he
Yeah.
loves us and he
Yeah.
knows that and like we're all acting too cool for it and it didn't phase him. And I think it's really easy to lose sight of that and so not really advice. I think I need to think about my advice answer, but to me that was like something around the action piece I think is for me like has always resonated and I've never thought of doing anything different. It's always teaching. My teaching looks different now, but just kind of like model the words that you're going to preach. And I think he did that both in the classroom,
Yeah.
outside the classroom. He was one of the few teachers that showed up. I played college ball for a small school and he came and watched the game. Like he didn't have to
Mm,
do that. Just, the little things that
it is.
he did that for everybody. I wasn't a special case. And so I just think like, man, like there's something to that, just to be acknowledged. I think whether that's
Oh,
whatever it
oh,
is.
yeah. I love that. Now you have me thinking of all my pastimes because
Yeah.
it is. You're in education. Someone at some point, really made you feel seen. That's why we do this. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, there's always an offhand comment or gesture or action that can make or break another human, and we may not even realize it in the moment. I mean, he was deliberate in that daily, but I think about such a small thing, right? It's a 1 second transaction, but maybe
Yeah.
like we talked about, he showed up and did it every single day, right? Like
Yeah.
we're talking about this
Right.
mindfulness, these things. We need to do it more than just once a month, or
Yeah.
we got to put it into practice. And so that's good. Good. Yeah. Thanks for putting me out in the on hot seat. That's good for me.
Anytime.
Well, Jordan, I know we're at time, but I want to make sure for those that want to know more about your work, for those listening that maybe didn't even know that maybe these were even opportunities for their school or for their districts, and for those that just want to learn more, we talked
Yeah.
about videos and lots of things. Where are some of the best places for them to get started to know more about you or the organization? And then obviously anything we talked about will get linked in the show notes. But
Yeah.
I always like to say if someone's at a red light and they want to start figuring stuff out now, where are the
Oh,
best places to go?
I think our website is a great place. So challenge to change Inc. mindfulleducation.com. We have all of our information on there. My email will be on there too. You'll see ways to contact us. I'm happy to provide that in the details below as well. You can always email me. But that's a great piece because I said there's a lot of things that we do at our company. So go on there to see what really fits your needs best, and then we can work like a Nana.
Perfect. Well, Jordan, this has been absolutely fantastic. I hope this opens up more minds and hearts to figuring out how to bring this work in. If nothing else, bringing that awareness piece that there are people like you doing this work and willing to help bring it into schools for both educators and the students. So thank you for carving out some time and being flexible. And I just really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for all that you do and continue to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
Hey y'all. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.